Hi, I'm Stuart from Congleton Garden Machinery. I'm one of the directors. We are seen as one of the Allett service dealers and authorised homeowner stockists. We've been in business for 33 years, and in amongst our team we have two engineers who together have got 59 years service in engineering. So we've got a good idea of what we're doing with the servicing of the Allett mowers. They're fully trained, they're professionals, a lot of background knowledge, so it all goes to ensure that the machine is serviced in the way it should be. If you go through an authorised service dealer, specifically for Allett, you'll find that they'll be supplying genuine Allett parts. They will be giving excellent customer service with a fast turnaround, and as important as anything, your machine, in terms of its history of its servicing, will be logged so that when you come to part exit or upgrade it for another Allett machine, the likelihood is that you'll get a greater value in that part X. Generally, we fire the machine up and we run it until the oil goes warm and just make observation as to whether everything seems to be in order in a general way. Once we get to the oil to a certain operating temperature, that's the time when we can use the siphon tube to actually remove the oil from the engine and replace with new. Now, it's important that's done from the point of view that in that way you're going to have oil that retains the correct viscosity and will ensure that the moving parts within the engine are lubricated correctly. We then move on to the air filter, remove the cover, dispose of the old filter, clean out the housing, and that ensures that no dirt, debris, grass cuttings are going to find its way into the carburetor itself. Also, it'll ensure you've got good airflow to provide the right mixture between the fuel and the air to ensure that the engine is operating at maximum efficiency. Whilst that's off, we remove the carb bowl under here and drain all the fuel out of the tank. Normally after 30 days, you'll find that the volatility of the fuel will be lost, and consequently, if we drain it completely, especially in the winter period, ready for storage, clean out any sediment that's in the bottom of the bowl, and then replace with fresh fuel with additive, or alternatively use aspen fuel, that will be ready for the spring and will fire up first pull, hopefully in the new year. From there, we move on to the spark plug, which is located at the back, ensuring we fit the correct plug. This will ensure that the correct spark is given to the fuel when it enters into the combustion chamber, giving maximum power, maximum output. Replace the plug cap and then move on to the side cover here, which is removed, and this is where the drive belts are, the pulleys, which all need to be checked, the drive gear, to ensure there's been no slippage on the belts, so there's no cracking of the belts, and that the pulleys and the bearings are intact and not worn in any way. Replace where necessary and move on to the housing, which covers the little rubber buffer, which is the drive buffer from the engine to the belts at the side. Quite often this can be seen to move because the lug screws have become a little bit loose, so we tighten those and ensure that the drive from the engine to the pulleys and consequently through to the cylinder is exactly as it should be. Replacing that, we move on to the cutting cylinder, the sharp end. This is probably the most important part of the mower at the end of the day, because you've bought a mower to give a nice stripe, an Allett mower to give a nice stripe to the lawn, and it's essential that that's not only sharp together with the bottom blade underneath, but that it's actually adjusted correctly onto the bottom blade so that at the end of the day it's going to cut a piece of paper with a very neat edge rather than bruising the grass as it would do if it was blunt and not adjusted correctly. So there's a correct setting for that, which is essential to ensure, one, that it cuts effectively, and secondly, that it doesn't take the power away from the engine unnecessarily. Whilst doing that, we're checking the front roller to make sure there's no play in the bearings and no movement, and similarly the rear roller where there's bearings housed in there, once again to ensure that it's a nice even drive along the lawn surface. And at the back of the mower you'll find there's a height adjuster which needs to move freely in order to get the height of cut that you require. Once that has all been done, it's a general check round for items such as the cables, making sure they're moving freely. all the drive mechanism to engage the cutting blade, and finally ensuring that there is no grass residue under the recoil housing, which in theory can affect the cooling of the engine and once again pull the performance down. Last by no means least is the recoil rope. Check there's no fraying in that. We don't want you to see you trying to start it in the new year and then all of a sudden that breaks. And then with this particular machine, which is one of the most popular machines of the Allett range, there's an on and off button, and we want to obviously make sure that that's operating effectively. So when you do come to stop the mower, it does stop. We also check the drive on the cylinder so that if it's ticking over and you're moving away from the mower for a second or two to empty the grass box, the machine doesn't move forward and the cutting blade doesn't continue to rotate. So at the end of the day, very specifically, that's the work that's undertaken by an Allett approved service dealer. They've got the right skills, the right equipment to be able to do that. And once all that servicing is done, the machine is put down on the floor, started up, we check the revs and make sure it's running effectively at the right revolutions as guided by the manufacturers. It's then ready to return to the customer and ready for the new season. Okay, you've invested in a top quality Allett machine. Now the most important thing is to ensure that it's going to be cutting correctly. To do that, it's got to go onto a purpose-made cylinder grinder, which will set the cylinder correctly, make sure it's straight, take out any damage that's been caused by stones, and even if it's slightly bent, and I only say slightly bent at one end where it's caught a stone, that can be rectified by grinding back, but there's a limit to how far it can go. So it's got to go on a purpose-made machine in order to do that, and then it's got to be set against the bottom blade to get the maximum effect on the cutting mechanism. Okay, so that's the petrol machine. Now let's move on to this little beauty, the Allett Liberty. 35 centimetre cut, which for the older generation is 14 inch, speaking my language now. In many cases, the principles are the same. We've got a side cover here, drive mechanism under here, which all has to be removed and then given access to the belt and checked. At the front end, we've got the cylinder and the blade. It's important with the cylinders, by the way, to be checking for any damage caused by stones or from them being bent, because obviously, if that is the case, it's not going to cut against the bottom blade effectively, and that all needs to be ground out on a professional purpose-made cylinder grinder. With the battery mower, in addition to that, we've got the height adjustment on the side, which if I turn it this way, that needs to be checked to be operating correctly, and you can see it's affecting the bottom, the front roller, which in turn will lift the cylinder off the ground or lower it onto the ground to give you the height of cut and the precision cut that you want. The important part here is the motor, obviously. One of the most important factors is to ensure that it's getting the right airflow to keep it cool. Otherwise, that can be burnt out very easily. And with the battery, which I have removed for now, which is very easily removed from under here, there are lugs on the battery which need to be checked to ensure they haven't oxidized or no dirt affecting their contacts. And similarly, the battery container, cleaning that out of any debris to ensure those contacts are clear and free and prevent any problem when it comes to starting the mower. Again, we check the cables to make sure they haven't been kinked when the handles have been folded down and no breaks in those, and that the system operates correctly so that when you let the handle go, the machine becomes static and the cylinder blade stops turning. That's vitally important. Finally, again, we've got front roller, which in this case is plastic, and it needs to be checked to make sure there's no wear on the end, and the rear roller on the back, as with the petrol machine, whereby we've got bearings in there which need to be checked to ensure that nice, continual, flat, smooth drive. In that way, you're going to end up with a perfect cut on your lawn as intended through your investment with Allett machines. It's going to give a precision cut and a perfect stripe, which I'm sure your neighbours and friends will admire as they walk past. And we're here to help you, as with all authorised service dealers, and provide a collection and delivery service if required. So the key is, you've made the investment into the machine. Now's the time to ensure that you maintain good value from that investment, get it serviced by a professional dealer, and it's then ready for the new season.